This is what my workshop looks like before I start filming. I have pictures I've printed, some designs of the pictures, then I have blueprints or yellow prints, I guess. And I have some other designs on graph paper, pictures as reference. I also have different materials. I test different materials before I start a video. So let's start. Hello, and welcome back to the Craft Mansion. I'm David, and today I will show you how I made MJOLNIR from the Marvel movies. I'm not trying to call MJOLNIR, I'm just trying to bring the video. Okay, here we go. I said anyone from the Marvel movies. It's not from THOR Ragnarok because, well, yeah, RIP. Now let's call the intro, and then we can continue. So I don't have Uru at home, and I'm guessing you don't either, so we'll get a substitute. We have some Jablo. And some more Jablo. So I just need the parts that are right for my hammerhead, and so this one would do, and I need some more to make it thicker. Okay. It's 2 millimeters off. Yeah, it's not thick enough as well. Nope. No. After a lot of measuring, I landed on these 5 and then these 2. So I have these 5 go like this, and then that's pretty much the concept. So now I have to mark them so I can cut the extra pieces off, and then I can glue them. Or do I have a missing piece? And now it's time to bring out my favorite tool. I'm talking, of course, about the styrofoam cutter. Yeah, it's hot. Okay. Well, that's so satisfying. I mean, the way it cuts, it's so smooth. Using a metal ruler on one side and my eyes to roughly keep up with the other side, I cut a straight line, but making it so that the length of the Jablo was slightly bigger than what I needed, so as to cut all foam layers together later on. Forgot this again. To glue the pieces together, I used all-purpose adhesive and spread it around all over the area. As I went along, I realized that I needed to spread the glue as soon as I applied it on, because if I left a glob of glue, it eats the foam away. So make sure to test your glues before applying them to your material. I'm quite an impatient man, and I flapped my pieces of Jablo around so it would dry faster. Once both sides were dry, I pressed them together and repeated the process to form the base of the hammerhead. When I came to cut all the layers together, my foam cutter wasn't large enough, so I tried different methods. I tried to use an electrical wire, I tried joining 2 of the cutter's wires together, and I also tried heating the wires through conduction using the wood burner. So none of that worked, and I have to resort to the caveman method of cutting with a knife. But this is a little old, so I have to bring out a new one, and I've never used this, so... Look, it's so cute, it's so cute! That's so cute! It's a little contraption. Whoop! Wait. Next one, come on. There we go. I cut off what I could using the foam cutter, so that means I could only cut the corners. I finished the rest by using my retractable knife, and as guidelines I taped down 2 hacksaw blades using the straight edge. The cuboid is 25.8 cm in length, and in width and height it's 15.7 cm. Once I was happy with my result, I sanded the Jablo for a smoother finish. Then I cut the edges off to make a beveled cuboid. Here I used the 2 hacksaw blades again to create a straight edge. The bevel is 3 cm from the top and 1.8 cm from the side, and I did this for all 8 short edges. The 4 longer edges have a bevel of 1.8 cm both from the top and the side. Then I marked 5 mm from every corner on the 2 small faces of the cuboid and marked the design I needed to cut with the foam cutter. I slowly went through the corners so that the 2 small faces become an octagon, and for those of you who have no basic geometry, an octagon is a shape with 8 edges. I layered 2 mm EVA foam all over the Jablo, and I glued it using Yuhu glue, starting with the 4 largest sides, and then I cut the foam on all sides to match the bevel of the Jablo. Then I glued the 4 longer edges using all-purpose glue, where there is foam-to-foam contact, and Yuhu glue for the Jablo, and I also beveled the sides to match the rest of the foam. Then I did the same for the two smaller faces using Yoo-hoo glue and then beveling the edges. Okay, so for now I'm going to stop applying the foam and I'm going to work on the design that goes on the edge. So I designed this template from this picture. You can find this by contacting me on the Craftmansion, Facebook or Instagram. I tried different techniques, and this one I used foam. And I used the wood burner to take off the excess, but it didn't work out. I also tried 3D printing it with my 3D pen, but it wasn't that smooth, so I finally landed on this. I'm going to make it out of cardboard, and to refrain from copying the design every time, I designed the negative and made the stamp. I arranged all the details where the paint wasn't clear enough, carefully following my design and the original image. There are many twists and turns, but by making sure to cover everything, I reduced some work from later on when cutting the pieces. Is it pieces? Pieces? It sounds weird. Pieces. I say pieces weirdly, I think. Then I started the cutting, putting all pieces, again, pieces, it's piece. Anyways, putting all the pieces on the printed version, so as not to confuse one piece with another or to lose any pieces. I snapped 2 blades along the way, nearly taking out my eye, but that's what it takes to produce sharp and clear detail. Health and safety are definitely number 1 on this channel. Using super glue, I glued all the pieces in place. I photocopied the original template 8 times and glued the cardboard one piece at a time with a pair of tweezers and a thin metal rod to help stabilize the cardboard on the paper. I used Mod Podge to seal all the cardboard and to make sure no pieces would detach if I hadn't applied enough super glue. From the template, I copied the straight edge around the design and cut the finished result. Using Yoo-hoo, I then glued the design in place and then covered the edge with a frame of 2mm EVA foam using all-purpose adhesive. I cut off the excess to flatten it, making sure to not cut too much, especially when it came to the foam at the corners. Since the edges will be shown in the final product, I sanded them flat using my Dremel tool. Now I know I look a bit stupid like that, when don't I? But I didn't want bits of foam and glue to get stuck in my beard, so I used a piece of cloth. The middle part of the hammer is thicker than the ends, so I started adding another layer of foam. The bottom is separated into 3 parts, and I glued them on with contact glue. So contact glue is where you apply the glue to both sides, wait for it to dry, and then press the 2 faces together firmly. Those same indentations go a bit further into the second piece of foam, so I made sure to line them up correctly. As I went along, I sanded the edges flat together and removed all unwanted hairs of foam using a pair of scissors. The faces on the side have that design near the bottom, where I left a 5mm separation between the 2 parts. The remaining 3 layers have no design on them, so I just glued plain pieces of foam. On top of the hammerhead, there is a circle with runes on it, which I made from floor mat foam. Then I removed the textured side using my knife and the Dremel tool. So I encountered a small problem when it came to the circle. As you can see, it's too big. And I didn't try it on before cutting the foam. It was just a small problem, so I cut some other variations. This was too small and ended up on this one. So I just reduced this circle to this one. I sanded the edges. Health and safety are number 1. See, I make mistakes for you so you don't have to. To copy the runes, I taped down the template and cut only the vertical lines to create a guide. Then, while the template was still in place, I copied every rune and slightly cut into the foam with my X-Acto knife. But before touching this circle, I flipped the hammerhead and marked an X in the middle. And now that I've made the X, this sort of looks like a hammer if it was designed by Taika Waititi. A lot of colors like Thor Ragnarok. Anyways, the X is for the handle. And for the handle I'll be using this broomstick. Of course not all of it, it's too long, but I will cut it and I'll find a way to keep it straight when inserting it into the hammerhead. I started by making a pilot hole with a metal rod and then drilled into the jablow. I used a piece of wood to try and keep a 90-degree angle. Didn't really work that much, but it was better than nothing. I marked the length of broomstick that was inside the hammerhead and added another 33.5 cm to it, and then I cut the size of the handle from the rest of the broomstick. Now that I didn't need to work on the bottom, I could glue on the circle at the top. So I marked an X and then, using a needle, I centered the template and held it in place. I used contact glue to attach the circle in place. To cover the handle, I used EVA foam, again. Up till now there was no reason behind the colors of the EVA foam, but for the handle I wanted a light peach color. I sanded the broomstick roughly and attached the foam to it using contact glue. I added another layer of foam because I needed the handle to be wider, and this is the one that needed to be peach. The piece I had wasn't long enough, so to hide the seam I measured where one of the rings would go and cut the foam accordingly. At the neck of the handle, near the hammerhead, there is a thick ring which I designed from foam. I hollowed out the middle and sanded down the texture on the bottom. This ring has a cone shape, without the point at the end of course. So first I cut off big chunks and then sanded it for a smoother finish. 2 mm off from the top, I carved a shallow cut into the foam. I glued the ring on with contact glue and used the handle as a guide to glue it in the middle. I heat sealed the foam with my heat gun on low heat and used brown shoe polish to color the foam. This is the reason I wanted peach colored foam, because the shoe polish and peach foam create a really nice leather color. I dabbed the polish onto the handle and not streaking it, so as to create a more authentic patchy pattern with the brown color. Patchy pattern. In total I gave the handle 4 coatings of shoe polish to get that really dark brown I was going for. While the shoe polish dried, I started working on the rings that go on the handle. There are 10 in total. I also copied the design that goes on the pommel onto cardboard. I needed 2 of these, one for each side of the pommel. I didn't create a negative stamp here, I just pressed really hard on the template itself to mark the cardboard underneath, since I only had to do 2 of these. Once I had copied the whole pattern, I went over it with a pencil. I made the main body of the pommel from EVA foam. Then I glued a strip of foam on the edge and rounded it using the Dremel tool. Round the openings through which the belt would go, I glued a layer of foam and rounded it as well. I used the all-purpose adhesive, which by the way is like a tube of contact glue, so I used it in smaller areas. I glued both ends of the pommel together and then reinforced it with the painter's tape from the back. I superglued the cardboard design onto the foam, cut the lines to make some parts stand out more than others, and then sealed it with Mod Podge. I used a brown belt to make the small belt at the end of the hammer. It is 45 cm in length and 1.5 cm in thickness. To make the belt and handle match, I applied 2 coats of brown shoe polish. Here I didn't need the belt to be patchy, so I streaked the sponge along. Once everything was ready, I heat sealed the foam so it would have a little more shine when painted. I paid extra attention to the runes on top so as not to overheat them, while still making sure they opened up enough to be read. So now all the parts are ready and I can start painting. So I'll go and start off with a base layer of silver. To cap the end of the pommel, I cut a circular piece of foam and attached it to a piece of plastic card. The plastic is wide enough to fit in the pommel, but the foam stays on top, and I drilled 2 holes through the 2 layers. Then I also drilled 2 holes at the end of the handle. To attach the rings to the handle, I used super glue and I attached it bit by bit, following the guidelines I drew beforehand. I glued the pommel in place, and then using contact glue, I attached the belt in place. To keep the upper part of the pommel from warping when the hammer is carried from the belt, I cut and painted a circular bit of foam to fit snugly on the belt. Then last but not least, the cap on top. To make sure nothing detached, I screwed in 2 screws through the cap of the pommel, all the way through the broomstick. To attach the handle to the hammer, I used silicone. It's quite clear I've never used it before. Oh god, that's disgusting and it looks so wrong. So for this video's health and safety lesson, never apply silicone with your hands. Silicone is waterproof, obviously. And I tried washing it, and I couldn't, and I had to use this to scrape the silicone off my fingers. And it smells like shit. Once the silicone dried, I black washed the entire hammer. I just mixed some black paint with some water, and once applied, I wiped off the excess paint to leave deeper areas with a more weathered look. The most noticeable effect is when this technique is applied to the runes on top of the hammer. Black paint settles in the cuts, while the surface is wiped clean. I also weathered the handle. After all, it's from where the hammer is handled, so it makes sense to create a used look. And last but not least, I also painted over the pommel. So now all the black washing is done. I think I got all the details. It's pretty much what I want. The color really changes. I mean, this used to be a plain silver, it wasn't that good looking, but with black washing, the details really come out, and especially these parts, they're amazing. But now I've got to go wash my hands, or wash myself, because I'm black. And I added some dark silver paint to this design on the sides and the two strips at the bottom to further bring out a distinction in layers. The last step I did was dry brushing over the hammerhead with silver. In this prop, the dry brushing doesn't really highlight areas as much as it creates a streaky pattern on the flat surfaces, which makes them look like polished metal. Dry brushing is a technique where you dab a paintbrush in some paint, wipe most of it away, and then roughly go over areas you want to highlight to make them lighter. And that is how I made MJOLNIR from the MCU. This is my first project which I finished in less than a week, and hopefully I will get on that streak and get to produce one video every week. Now in the last video I told you about the Malta Maker Fair. It has been postponed because of COVID-19 and I don't know the dates yet. When I know them I will tell you. Don't forget you can get the templates for this build by contacting me on Facebook or Instagram under the craft mention. Don't forget to like and comment on this video. If you have a suggestion, drop it down in the comments and maybe in the future we'll take that suggestion and make it a prop. And don't forget to subscribe as we'll have 2 more videos. Well, I have many other videos but I can only put 2 on the screen. So until then, this is MJOLNIR. I'm David. And this is the craft mention.